Chapter 10 of The Mouse and the Motorcycle. An Anxious Night. At first, Ralph's scheme worked. Keith delivered the promised bacon, toast, and jelly. The mice ate sparingly and laid aside the leftovers against the day that Keith might leave the hotel. Ralph's mother continued to worry about tipping room service. I want to do the right thing. There must be some way we can manage to tip the boy. The mice dared not to leave the nest to search for small coins that might have rolled under the bed and dressers. It was late in the afternoon when Ralph heard Keith and his parents returning to the rooms. Very quietly, so that his toenails did not make any scrambling sounds on the wood, he slipped to the knothole and peeped out to see Keith flop down on the bed. "Do I have to go down to the dining room for dinner?" he asked his mother and father. "I'm not hungry." "Uh-oh, there goes dinner." "I told you not to eat that whole bag of peanuts so close to dinner," said his father. "I didn't eat all of it," said Keith. "Well, that's good," said Ralph. "At least there'll be some peanuts." "You'll feel better after you wash up for dinner. Hurry along now." When his parents had gone into room 216, Ralph noticed that Keith seemed to drag himself off the bed. He walked to the wash basin, turned on the cold water, moistened his fingers, and wiped it all over his face. And he turned off the water, and he gave the middle of his face a swipe with a towel, which then he returned the towel to the rack and immediately fell to the floor. Keith did not pick it up, and there was nothing unusual about that. Boys rarely pick up their towels. What was unusual is that he returned to bed, where he sat down and stared at the wall. He didn't play with his cars. He didn't eat the rest of his peanuts. He just sat there. Ralph stuck his head out of the hole. Is anything wrong?" he asked. "Oh, hi," Keith answered listlessly. "I feel sort of awful." "Say, that's too bad." Ralph ventured out a little further from the knothole. "I know what you mean. Think about the motorcycle makes me feel awful too. No, it's not that kind of awful. I feel awful in a different way. On my insides." "Think you'll make it to dinner?" "I guess so." There's no enthusiasm in Keith's voice. "Anything I can bring you?" "Whatever's handy." He hesitated to place an order when he could see Keith didn't feel like going to dinner at all. "We are, kind of depending on you. The housekeepers found all those sheets I chewed through to get out of the hamper, and I guess she got pretty excited about the mice. Now we're lying low until the whole thing blows over." A smile flickered across his face. "Don't worry. I won't let you down. I'll save you some peanuts, and I thought they might be handy for storing." "Gee, thanks." Keith got slowly off the bed and poked his peanuts one by one through the knothole. When he finished, Ralph popped out again and said, "Thanks a lot." Keith smiled feebly and then flopped down on his bed again. Ralph went to work moving the peanuts away from the knothole to make sure there was room for whatever Keith brought. He felt it would be fun to be surprised by the menu this time. It was something of a shock to find that dinner, which was stuffed through the knothole much earlier than Ralph expected, consisted only of a few crackers. Ralph poked his head out to see if it was coming, but Keith was getting into his pajamas. "Are you going to bed early?" asked Ralph, realizing he had not heard Keith's parents come in. "I felt so awful I couldn't even eat. They told me I better just come up and go to bed." He tossed his shirt on the floor on the foot of the bed and pulled on his pajama top. When his head emerged, he said, "Sorry about your dinner. I was the best I could do. I just had soup." That's all right." Ralph was beginning to be concerned. If the boy couldn't even eat, neither could the mice. Keith fell into the bed, and Ralph ran off to report the news to his relatives. "What a shame," said his mother. "That poor boy." "Oh dear, what are we going to do?" cried his Aunt Dorothy. "Our very lives depend on him." The little cousins huddled together, big-eyed and frightened. "Yes, what about us?" said Uncle Lester. "How are we going to manage if he doesn't bring us our meals? It isn't safe for us to go out pilfering when the housekeeper has declared war on us." "I knew it was a mistake to depend on people," said his Aunt Sissy. We'll manage. We always have." Ralph's mother was trying to be brave, but Ralph could see how worried she was. After all, he did bring a supply of peanuts, and we should be grateful for that. "He didn't bring many peanuts," said his uncle, not to sound ungrateful. "The greedy fellow is probably ill from stuffing himself with too many peanuts. Serves him right." "Now, Lester," fussed at Ralph's mother, "the boy had the right to eat his own peanuts, but I do wish he hadn't been so hungry." Ralph returned to the knothole. Keith was lying in the bed with his sports car in one hand. "How do you feel now?" "Awful." Before Ralph could reply, footsteps in the hall warned him that his parents were coming. He drew back inside the knothole, where he could be observing without being seen. Mrs. Gridley paused by her son's bed and laid her hand on his forehead. "He does feel a little warm," she remarked. "He'd probably be all right in the morning," said his dad. "He just hiked too far in the sun this afternoon." "I hope so." His mother sounded uncertain. Mr. Gridley filled the glass of a wash basin and brought it to Keith. "Here, drink this." He drank the water, fell down onto his pillow, closed his eyes, and his parents left. When it was good and dark, Ralph ventured through the knothole. He could hear Keith breathing deeply, and he knew that he was asleep. Since he had no one to talk to, he found his little crash helmet where he had hidden it behind the curtain. After he had adjusted the rubber band under his chin, he climbed up the windowsill to look out into the world beyond the hotel and dream about the lost motorcycle. From his perch on the windowsill, Ralph saw that the parking lot held more cars than usual. This meant that the motels back on the highway were full, and travelers had followed the signs pointing to Mountain View Inn. He could hear the holiday weekend activity in the halls, too. People walking up and down, luggage being set, a thump on the floor, keys rattling in the locks. Gradually, as the night wore on, the hotel grew silent, more silent than usual, for now even the second-floor mice were quiet. There was no scurrying, scrambling, or squeaking inside the walls. In the silence, Keith tossed up in his sleep, mumbled something that sounded like motorcycle. In a moment, his mother slipped through the doorway, pulling her robe over her nightgown. Ralph hid behind the curtains, peeping out just enough to see what was happening. She laid her hand on her son's forehead. Oh dear. Almost at once she was joined by Keith's father. "What's the trouble?" "He's got a fever," answered the mother. "He's burning up." Ralph was shocked. The boy was really sick. It wasn't too many peanuts or too much hiking. The boy was really truly sick. The father turned on the lamp at the bedside table, and he too laid his hand on the boy's forehead. Keith's eyes opened. I'm so hot," he mumbled. "I want a drink." His mother pulled back a blanket while his father brought a glass of water and helped his son's head so he could drink it. Ralph watched anxiously, but this time he was not selfishly concerned about room service. He was really concerned about Keith, the boy who had saved him from terrible fate in the wastebasket, and who had trusted him with his motorcycle, the boy who had given him, when he had lost that motorcycle, forgiveness and food. "We had better give him an aspirin to bring down his temperature," said Mrs. Gridley. Mr. Gridley started towards the room and stopped. He snapped his fingers as he remembered something. "I took the last one in the backpack the other day. I had a headache. I meant to buy some more when we stopped, but I didn't think about it till now. I should have thought about it myself. I knew we were almost out. Never mind, I'll get some." He picked up the phone, listened, shook it again, listened. He said, "Well, that's peculiar. The line seems to be dead. There must be a disconnect from the switchboard. But surely there is someone on duty at the desk downstairs. Every hotel has a night clerk. I'll go find out." "I'm so hot," mumbled Keith. "I'm so hot." His mother wrung out the washcloth with cold water and laid it on her son's forehead. "You'll feel better soon. We'll get you an aspirin." The minutes dragged by. What's keeping him? Why isn't he hurried? Where is that man? The old hotel snapped and creaked. Keith rolled and tossed, trying to find a cool spot on the pillow, and his mother wrung out the washcloth with more cold water. When's Dad coming?" asked Keith, his eyes bright and his cheeks flushed. In a minute. He'll soon be here." I wish he would hurry." Still the minutes dragged. Finally footsteps were heard in the hallway, and the dad was returning. "He's here with an aspirin?" At last thought Ralph. Thank gosh. Mr. Gridley shook his head. "There isn't an aspirin to be found anyplace." He sounded thoroughly exhausted. First of all, the night clerk was sound asleep on the couch when I came in, and I had to wake him. We couldn't find any aspirin anywhere. "Oh no," exclaimed the mother. "Oh no," echoed Ralph. "What about the gift shop, the lobby? It must sell aspirin. It's locked up tight. The clerks went home with the keys. Oh dear." The night clerk was really very nice about it. He even came up and looked in the housekeeper's office. "How far is the nearest drugstore?" 25 miles back on the main highway," answered the father, "and it's closed till 10 o'clock. It doesn't open again till the morning." The mother held her watch under the lamp. It's almost 1 o'clock. It's hours till the morning. She crossed the room to wring out the washcloth again. "What are we going to do?" "Well, what can we do?" the father said helplessly. "I even telephoned the doctor, but there's been a bad accident on the highway, and he can't come. The night clerk said he would telephone the milkman before he starts his route and ask him to bring some, but he won't get here till 7. All we can do is wait." Keith tossed under the cold washcloth. Mom, I think I'm just going to go to sleep now, Keith whispered. I guess that's all we can do then. She gave him a kiss on his hot forehead and turned out the light. Ralph didn't wait for the boy's parents to leave the room. As soon as the light was out, he moved silently to the carpet, and by the time he was gone through the doorway into room 216, he had hidden his little crash helmet behind the curtain and was halfway through the knothole. Somewhere, someplace in the hotel, there must be an aspirin tablet, and Ralph was going to find it. He only wished he had the motorcycle so he could travel a little faster.